Hello everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Rosemond Phil-Othihiwa and I am your host of the Young Lawyer Mentorship Series. This is done in collaboration with the Young Lawyers Forum of the Nigerian Bar Association Ikeja branch. And so today we'll be talking about an incredible topic, and it's the future of law and practice post-COVID-19. This is an interactive learning session, and we have with us an amazing global thought leader, a speaker, an author, and a lover of young lawyers. He goes by the name of Fransisco Frank Ramos, and he will be joining us in answering a couple of questions which I posed to him, in particular referring to this topic which we have before us. And so without further ado, I'll be reading a brief profile of our guest. Francisco, also known as Frank Ramos, is the managing partner of the Miami litigation boutique firm of Clarke Silvergate P.A, where he practices in the area of personal liability and injury defense, product liability, employment, and commercial litigation. He serves as a member of the Federation of Defense and Corporate Counsel, the FDCC, where he has served as the co-chair of the Disposition Boot Camp, the Art of Marketing Seminar, and the ACT Initiative. He is the past president of the Florida Defense Lawyers Association, the past chair of the 11th Judicial Circuit Historical Society. He has served across several boards of the Miami-Dade County Defense Bar Association. He is also an author. He has authored about 10 books, some of which include Social Media Musings, My Reflections on Life and Practice, the Associate Handbook, Attorney Marketing 101, Training Your Law Firm Associates, The Process, the Practice and Process of Law, a checklist for every occasion, as well as so many other books. He's also the author of over 300 articles. Also, this video commences with me posing a question to Mr. Ramos on how young lawyers in Nigeria and Africa, to be general, can position themselves globally for opportunities in the context of this COVID-19 situation. I know you would enjoy this question and this interactive session, and I can't wait to see you on the other side. Please subscribe, put in your comment. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Line and communicating with them, reading what they're reading, watching what they're watching online through various platforms, blogs, and so forth. And maybe even volunteering. If there's somebody that you really admire that does an area that what you do, example for cybersecurity, I don't do it, but let's say you really want to get into cybersecurity, and these days that's a very hot topic, and maybe you want to really practice that in Europe, but you're not there. Maybe you find somebody who's doing that in England or in France, you connect with them on LinkedIn, and maybe you volunteer to write an article with them, and you do the research, and suddenly you can co-author something with them, or you present with them on Zoom or another platform, or you just volunteer or get involved in a voluntary bar association, because these days voluntary bar associations are all remote now because we can't get together, and so a lot of voluntary bar associations are figuring out ways to connect remotely. And if they connect remotely between me and another attorney in Miami, they'd certainly do it between me and an attorney in Africa or Europe or Asia. So these are unique times. They're unprecedented, but they're very unique, and they provide opportunities to reach out to folks that you probably never reach out to, and for them to reach out to you and create connections, relationships that are probably unheard of just a few weeks ago.
Exactly like what we are doing now. I wouldn't have come up with this idea or with this, series if I hadn't actually taken a leap to just go beyond my comfort zone and actually reach out to you. And I'm so grateful that you are here today. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's also really an amazing thing that you are a trial attorney. In our country, we basically use the word you are a litigation lawyer in quotes. I think over your jurisdiction, it's called you're a trial lawyer, and you've been so for about 21 years. You've served on several organizations and all that. Now, how have you been able to leverage these volunteering activities, particularly using your skills and your competencies to really gather such a wide audience and get across to a lot of professionals like yourself? How are you able to actually leverage these activities you did volunteering for a lot of these organizations you just mentioned?
A lot of it has to just do with relationships and confidence. Those, I think, are the two key terms. I think by putting yourself out there, whether on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever other platform you use or are comfortable with, you get to know people, you get to interact with them, they get to know you, And if you like them and they like you, that's a basis of a referral. I think basically people refer cases to those they know, they trust, they like, and respect. And that takes time to develop that. But if you are constantly in front of somebody, either on LinkedIn through your posts or Facebook or some other forum, and you're always in their feed, or you're always writing an article or providing a podcast that they're reading or viewing, then you become part of their consciousness. And so when they have a need in your geographic region for a case that suits your qualifications, they're probably going to call you. It's just the way it is. And I think there's also this sort of social or psychological idea of creating this, I don't know if the word indebtedness is the right word, but the best analogy I can come up with is when I was a kid back in the 1970s, and I grew up in Chicago, I'd go to the airport to pick up or drop off family. And this was before you had to go through security, or there was security then, but you could actually wait for somebody right as they were deplaning or getting onto the plane. And at the time, there were a lot of hairy Krishnas in the airport in Chicago. And what they would do is that they would give you their booklet or a flower and then ask you for a donation. And they basically created this unwritten social contract. By them giving you something, they were basically expecting you to give something in return. And they determined, and they actually studied this, they found out that if they just came up and asked you for money, the odds of you giving it to them was very small. But if they gave you something small first, even if it was something really inconsequential, you would feel more obligated to return the favor. And so if you look at social media, especially LinkedIn, as sort of that type of forum where you're giving out free content and you're sharing information and data and advice and books and webinars and videos, you are creating this unheard of social contract with some of your followers. Not all of them, because many won't feel that obligated to do so, but some of them will feel a sense of obligation to you to give back to you some way. And that manifests itself in various ways and means. But so I think we all should obviously pay it forward and give something there, but by doing that, you're creating these relationships with people you probably never even met or known before, and they just follow you and they get to know you and they get to understand you and appreciate you. And someday they may have a case to refer to you, and you didn't even know them personally, but you created this contact and this bond through this medium. So that's my advice for anybody who is trying to develop a book of business, trying to develop relationships that lead to business. Find a forum you're comfortable in. LinkedIn, I think, is probably the most natural because it's really dedicated and focused on business. And there's a lot of lawyers on LinkedIn. There's probably, I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if there's 1 million or more lawyers worldwide on LinkedIn, maybe even more than that. Exactly. And there's groups on LinkedIn, there's different forums, there's different ways of sharing content. You can share video these days. I don't, but I know some lawyers who do. And that's a great way of getting your word out. And I think, and that's the relationship. And I think the other word that I used was confidence. By doing that, you create a certain level of confidence in yourself. It kind of pushes away the imposter syndrome, which we discussed earlier. By pushing out content and doing it regularly, especially if you find a niche for yourself and you're constantly posting about that niche, people perceive you as an expert, and perception sometimes is greater than reality. And I think I have not planned to try to become an expert, but I think people kind of see me as an expert in different areas because I just post so much. I don't see myself that way, but I think others perceive me that way. And it provides me a certain level of confidence when I interact with people, when I speak, when I communicate, when there are any sort of discussions. I just kind of assume that I'm going to take control of the situation. And people are kind of differential in that respect because I've done it on this forum. And so if I'm doing it on LinkedIn, I can do it in other forums as well. I can do it in the courtroom or in a boardroom, or when I'm taking a deposition in a conference room. It's very similar. So, find a niche, push out that niche, get comfortable in that niche, and eventually people are going to see you as an expert in that area.
That's amazing. Okay. I think that's really true. I found it to be quite effective. Would you say you've had any big breaks coming from as a result of your visibility on LinkedIn? Have you had people independently reach out to you? And can you share maybe an experience that you would basically want to tell us about, maybe one of those big breaks that you've had actually using maybe LinkedIn, one of the things? Yeah.
Yeah, I've had, I get calls in a lot of cases. Most of them are outside my area and I end up referring them out, but I've had a few matters referred to me through LinkedIn by other attorneys that turned into cases we could accept and handle. We had an employment case we've handled. I think I've had a couple employment cases through LinkedIn. I think what LinkedIn does is sort of one part of your toolbox where at the end of the day, you're trying to develop relationships with people and you want to stay at the forefront of their minds. And LinkedIn is one of the ways of doing that. And so you may already have existing relationships with other attorneys, but you want to be the first attorney they think of when they have a case. So it may not be necessarily directly through LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is sort of a reminder to them to think of you. And so, you may get a case from somebody and they may not tell you they did it through LinkedIn because you already have a relationship with them, but they thought of you instead of somebody else because they see you all the time on LinkedIn. And so, so that's something else. It's sort of, again, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, it is if you kind of think of yourself as, how am I going to get my message out to others to give me work? It isn't just one arrow it's like you have various arrows that you're kind of shooting from your bow, and LinkedIn is one of them. It's part of a larger scheme and strategy, and it kind of helps to create your persona and your brand.
Okay, that's great. And there's something you even mentioned that I want to reiterate. So you've spoken about the use of legal tech in conducting trials and a lot of things. Now, in the light of this COVID-19 situation, one of the predictions from the McKinsey Institute did a recent research also on CNBC, and it's been predicted that one of the changes that will occur is that you would have remote hearings, some of the things you've mentioned, e-discoveries, video conferences, social media marketing, virtual CLE conferences, and most of these things will become the new normal. Now, you already agree that these are some of the things that are being done. Do you see these innovations happening? Okay, I believe it's already happening, but what would be your advice for lawyers, law firms, and judicial systems that are actually struggling to implement these innovations? Maybe they are not yet up to date or struggling to actually accept the idea that remote hearings are actually possible, and some of the things you've mentioned. What would be your advice for systems, lawyers, and law firms that are struggling with that?
Yeah, I think technology is something that we all have to learn. Like, I've only been using Zoom for a few weeks and I still make my share of mistakes on it, and it's just a process. And I think with firms who are reticent about using it or not really familiar with it, I think this is going to become the new normal, at least for a while, and certainly in different parts of the world, because I think social distancing is going to remain in effect. And people are talking about how COVID-19 may be a seasonal disease and may come back from time to time. And so this isn't going to be anything new. And so in light of that, I think technology, whether we want to or not, and whether we approve it or not, is going to happen. And some firms I think are kind of waiting to see what happens, and they shouldn't. But even those firms are going to realize that they can't just stay on the sidelines for very long. And again, it provides certain opportunities, like you mentioned, remote CLE. Before, if I had to speak somewhere, I have to get on a plane and go to the expense of traveling somewhere else and taking the time away from my day-to-day work to present and so forth. And now it's become pretty common to just do it in your living room or here as I'm doing in my kitchen. And this is kind of the new norm. This is the expectation that people are okay with, somebody kind of walking into the back of your screen. It's just part of the problem. It is what it is. Or suddenly the volume going up or down. It's just, we're all getting used to this new technology, and it provides certain opportunities for smaller firms just using their iPhone or their Samsung and downloading a few apps and, either in their bedroom or even outside, speaking or sharing their expertise on a certain area. Maybe it's through, Zoom videos or through YouTube or whatever else. I think technology is becoming much more part of our everyday fabric in the legal field, and more people are embracing it. More people are sharing and becoming part of it. And folks who maybe 3 weeks ago who had never thought of going on a webinar to learn CLE suddenly realized that's it. That's the only game in town. And it's be the only game in town for the short term. And by the time things return back to normal, some folks realize, well, wait, this isn't so bad. I don't want to do this all the time, but I'd rather do this some of the time.
That's great. And these are some of the things that I believe a lot of people need to begin to put into their minds. We are practically in a system that you either innovate or die or perish. So everyone has to get with the program. So I've heard a lot of hardcore trial lawyers who are a bit averse to technology say things like, as long as you know the law, as long as you know how to apply the law, you are going to have a successful legal practice. I've heard that a lot. In fact, I've heard people say that as long as you know what to do, you can give good advice, you're fine. Do you agree with this statement? And do you actually believe that it's important for lawyers to learn skills outside their professional competencies, especially in the light of current events? Because you have lawyers who, this is my niche. Yeah, it's good to have a niche. But do you think it's important for a lawyer to maybe learn something about accounting, software engineering, maybe areas that are not so legal in the sense? So do you think that some of those things actually should be?
No, I agree.
I agree that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you need to be more well-rounded. At the end of the day, we're a service industry. We're serving clients in a way they're our customers, much the way a restaurant would serve a customer, or Amazon or some other company would serve a customer. And they have certain expectations. And I think more people are tech savvy. They want to deal with people through technology. And so we need to be familiar with the technology. They want things quickly and turn around quickly. So we have to be more responsive to them in terms of, calling them back or texting or emailing them. Some people want to use, instant messages instead of a traditional email. I think a lot of that is being dictated by our clients these days. And I think clients are kind of pushing us, whether we want to or not, into new areas of technology and providing them better service. For at least in the US, traditionally, lawyers kind of set themselves apart. They thought that they were immune to a lot of the changes going on in the commercial sector. And I just don't see that being the case anymore. Maybe there's certain clients that's true for, but more and more, most clients want us to deal with them the way other service providers deal with them. And they kind of see us as just another service provider, and they have certain expectations. And if their restaurant treats them a certain way, or if their cable company treats them a certain way, they want us to treat them the same way. And so that just comes in with, being a better communicator, being a better leader, understanding the technology and serving their needs and meeting them where they're at, as opposed to where we think they should be.
All right, that's amazing. So at this moment, please, everyone, if you have a question, now is the time to, you can send it by chat. We have a couple of questions which I would just go to. So we have a question from Emmanuel Okpara, and he says, COVID-19 comes with a wave of inevitable change. How promising is this change for a young lawyer, and how can we embrace it? I'm sure you may have given some answers, but if there's anything else you would want to add. We've talked about the use of technology, leveraging technology, but maybe you are narrowing it down to the young lawyer. So, Mr. Frank, how promising? It's very promising, I believe. Is this change, and how can we embrace the change? How should young lawyers take this approach? How should they be effective in taking this approach due to this new change?
Of course, COVID-19 is a pandemic. It's terrible. So many people have been affected worldwide. There have been so many deaths, certainly in the US, but leading into deaths worldwide. It is a terrible situation, but if there's any silver lining, it is really just changing the way we deal with each other in a way that people can interact with folks no matter where they are in the world. It used to be that you had to be in a certain region, state, or city to interact or do business. That's just not going to be the case anymore. As social distancing is being implemented and folks are learning that they can and have the capacity to work from home, people who they wouldn't otherwise consider as an employee or an independent contractor are suddenly on their radar. And so individuals, wherever you are, if there is a certain niche that you really want to practice, and there is a firm or a company that does that, consider reaching out to them. Consider offering your services. Maybe at first as an intern and then as a paid employee or a contractor. But these are interesting times where I think boundaries and regions don't make as much sense or have as much of an impact as they once did. And so there are opportunities, again, through social media, through platforms like Zoom and others, where you can reach out and create relationships across the pond or across continents that no one really had thought about doing just a few weeks ago.
All right, that's okay. Thank you very much. Emmanuel, I hope that answered your question. So basically talking about putting yourself out there, reaching out to organizations, first as an intern, and saying, you know, with time, you're able to actually show yourself. Mr. Frank, before I go to the next question, there's something you always say in your books, and it's a phrase, pay it forward. What does that really mean? I know to a certain extent how you've explained it, but conceptually, what does it actually mean when you use the term pay it forward?
Yeah, it's a common phrase we use here, and it's a phrase I learned years ago. When I first learned, I didn't understand, but now I appreciate basically that, you know, each of us are blessed in a certain way. Each of us, certainly on this call, we're all lawyers, and that wasn't easy for any of us. We had to go to school and pass certain licensing requirements, and now we're practicing, and we're certainly fortunate in that. And as we sort of progress in our journey in the legal field, and legal sector, and get more years under our belt and more matters behind us, I think each of us has an obligation to pay it forward and help those that come from behind, to help them with opportunities, to sort of mentor them, to show them what we learn from our experiences, both good and bad, and share our wisdom. You know, each of us has a destiny in this world, and each of us has a path, and each of us has to figure that out for ourselves, but each of us can help others figure it out for them as well.
That's amazing. Thank you. And you talk a lot about mentorship. In a situation where you really have been, in many ways than one, disappointed with a lot of people who, in quotes, see you as subjects rather than colleagues, how would you advise such a young lawyer to deal with such situations where they lack good and proper mentorship? What approach should young lawyers actually take when seeking to find motivation from someone who has already walked the path?
Yeah, I think try to reach out to whatever local bar association or voluntary association of lawyers exists, whether it's local or larger, or if it has to, it can be virtual. But find somebody that has your same experiences in your background, that's probably, you know, a few years out more than you are. Not necessarily somebody who's been out forever, but somebody who's been out maybe 4 or 5 years and still remembers what it's like to be in your shoes, and try to reach out to them. Again, these days it's kind of difficult. We're not really meeting socially as much, but a lot of organizations are having these Zoom calls or these Zoom happy hours. You know, try to connect with somebody online, and, you know, text them, or Skype them, and, you know, and try to just get their take on it. Sometimes I think each of us inherently knows, whether we want to or not, where we're supposed to go and what we're supposed to do. And we just need to talk it through, and we just need an ear to listen to. Because a lot of the stuff I do when I talk to people, I don't really do a whole lot of talking. This is kind of unusual for me. I basically do a lot of listening, and then kind of share with them my thoughts of what they told me. And I think a lot of it's kind of self-apparent. And we all have to kind of get there ourselves. But in terms of trying to find a mentor, you know, if you can't find somebody at your firm or at your company, because they're not really inclined to do that, try to find somebody in your local voluntary bar association. And if that doesn't help, then reach out to another bar association or find somebody online. But find somebody who does what you do and has somewhat similar experiences as yours, because you need that commonality, I think. I think trying to find somebody that's sort of divorced from what your reality is, they can share their experiences, but there's going to be some disconnect there. And so commonality, I think, is important when finding a mentor.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. I'm going to the next set of questions. And Emmanuel also asks a question. He says, a lot has been said about LinkedIn and how it helps in visibility. Is there a place of visibility for lawyers who are not writers? I asked this because most times when people talk about visibility on LinkedIn, it always goes with writing articles and likes. So he's basically asking, for those who may not, you know, be writers in their core, is there any opportunity for them to actually become visible on LinkedIn and maybe other platforms?
Yeah, you can do, there's a video now platform on LinkedIn. I haven't used it that much, but I see some people use it a lot and they prefer it. And you can record yourself on your cell phone, you know, 30 seconds, 2 minutes. We all have much shorter attention spans. So if you're gonna do a video to LinkedIn, you want to keep it short and sweet. But that's certainly, if you don't want to sit down and clock away on a keyboard, you can certainly record yourself. And the great thing about video before you upload it is that you can do several run-throughs until you find that you set it the right way, and the lighting is proper, and you're completely comfortable, and then you can just share it. And then you can do that, once a week or twice a week, and have sort of a video library. That's something you want to do. If you want to write personally, you can certainly share stuff you read. You can certainly share it with like a one-sentence thought or idea of why it's important or relevant to the community you're trying to connect with. So there's different ways.
Exactly.
I do a lot of writing, but that's certainly not the only way of staying active. And certainly once you're on LinkedIn and you make relationships, you can reach out to people individually, connect with them, message them, take the relationship offline, and just speak with them personally, either again through Skype or Zoom or WhatsApp or whatever else. There are lots of different ways of communicating with folks.
Okay, that's amazing. Going to the next question, and this is from Oluwaseun Tijani. He's actually my colleague in my firm. Hi, Sheun. He says, speaking of finding a niche, what would you recommend for a young lawyer who is finding it difficult to settle for a particular area of law? So there's so much, particularly as in quote, litigation lawyers or trial lawyers, advocates, as it were. There are so many practice areas. How do you navigate those areas to find a niche that actually works for you? And really, is it important to actually start with a niche in the early stages of your career?
Yeah, that's always tough because there are so many different practice areas. And sometimes people just sort of fall into an area because they work for a firm and the firm does X, and so they end up doing X, and sometimes it works out for them and sometimes it doesn't. I think you kind of have to ask yourself, what are your interests and hobbies outside of the law and what you really enjoy, and see where there's intersection between those hobbies and the practice areas that you're interested in. Because at the end of the day, we're going to be doing this for several decades. And so you want to find an area that you enjoy, that challenges you intellectually, that you enjoy dealing with people. And it might be trials, it may be litigation, it may be drafting documents, it may be wills and estates or bankruptcy or family law. And so I think most people just say, well, kind of look at the different areas and see what you like the most. But that's not probably the best approach. I think kind of be honest with yourself and do an assessment of what your interests are. One of the books I wrote is Go Motivate Yourself, which is a free book you can download. And there's a section on trying to discover what your talents are and what your interests are. And it's just a series of questions you can ask yourself. And a lot of them aren't even law related. But if you do a self-assessment like that and trying to figure out what you really enjoy outside the law, you'll probably figure out what you really enjoy inside the law.
That's amazing. Thank you. And there's something you always said in your books. For everyone who's joined this session, I will provide the links to Mr. Frank Ramos's books available. I will send them by email. Okay, sir. There's something you talk about, strengths and weaknesses, and you are a fan of develop your strengths and just work on your weaknesses. How can you explain what that means? Because my understanding is that if you're good at something, go forth in that direction. If you find something that is a bit a struggle, don't focus so much on it. I don't know if that's the point you're trying to make. So I just want you to clarify that about when talking about leveraging your strengths.
Yeah, I think each of us has certain level of talents. I think each of us is born with one or more talents. And I think it's up to us to discover. And so we have to figure out what those talents are. And, in order to be a successful lawyer, we have to be good at writing, good at speaking, good at communication, good at a number of tasks. But, each of us aren't going to be good at everything. And so we have to figure out first what our talents are. And sometimes, going back to the last question, figuring out what we want to do and what areas we want to practice in, I think a lot of that's talent driven because I don't think there's a coincidence that each of us is good at something or good at several things. And typically what we're good at is what we're supposed to be doing with our lives. And so if you can kind of discover what you're good at, develop it, and become an expert at it, I think you're going to gravitate toward the practice areas you should be doing. If you're very good at communication and you really like talking to people, you're probably going to become a trial lawyer. If you love to read and you like the intellectual challenge, maybe you'll become an appellate lawyer. If you like to look at, you're very detail oriented, you maybe be drafting contracts. And so you kind of have to find out for yourself where your skills lie. And that might be sort of the lodestar for you in figuring out where your career should be going.
Okay, so you've summarized this in 3 steps. Find what you're good at, become an expert at it, and keep going. That's incredible. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to the next question. And okay, sorry, this question is from Adaura. Hi, Adaura. Now, speaking on diversification, how should young lawyers in an environment that most times require a certain expertise? So I think this person is trying to ask how young lawyers in an environment that requires a lot of expertise and you're just starting out, how can you begin to tread that path, especially when you're trying to carve a niche for yourself and you're in an area that requires a lot of experience or a lot of exposure, but you feel like what you have is not enough?
Yeah, I think typically you start by trying to read everything you can in the area, both substantively in terms of whatever statutes or cases or regulations are out there, but you also go online. And these days, there's just such a plethora of information in every area, in every practice, in every region, that's for the most part pretty free. I mean, obviously, sites like Westlaw and Lexis have a cost, but there's a lot of free information that's shared regularly. And so my first piece of advice is to read as much as you can in that area and learn as much as you can, and then get involved in a voluntary bar association, which has a substantive committee in that area, and get involved with them and attend CLE online, get to know people within that practice, meet with them if you can in person. Obviously these days that's difficult, but talk to them and try to learn and act like a sponge and try to gather as much information as you can. There's certain areas that you can probably learn in a few months, certain areas that may take a few years longer. That depends. I guess one of the benefits of learning an area that is very complicated is that most people aren't going to make the effort. And so if you stick with it, eventually you'll be one of the few people in that area that's sort of known as a go-to person in that sector, and people will come to know you. Yes, it's a longer path, it's a longer voyage to get there, but it's certainly a worthwhile one.
Yes, thank you. We have some of that. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Okay, so to the next question. Please, you can keep writing your questions if you have them, but we will just take few questions from now. So this question is from Kingsley Ugochukwu. Hi, Kingsley. It's a pleasure having you here. He says, Mr. Frank, do you think the legal profession will ever revert back to analog law, given that lawyers are now forced to use tech and move with it in all aspects of their daily work now, at least until the social distancing rules become relaxed? I think that question was answered. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts.
No, I agree. I think we're never going to go completely back. I think, again, there'll be a subset of lawyers, especially ones that are more senior, that just hate technology and don't want to go back. They don't want to be paperless. They don't want e-discovery. They don't want to deal with computers. They still dictate things, and they're kind of going the way of the dodo bird. But I think for typically, this is the new reality. And whether you go kicking or screaming or not, I think this is going to substitute in large part the way we used to do things. We'll go back because I think we all need in-person interaction and socialization, but I think this has really kind of pushed and advanced the ball forward a great deal in terms of legal tech.
All right, thank you very much for that. So I get that goes thus. This is a very good question, I think. Martha Babatunde says that I would like to know how a young lawyer who has found an area of specialization in law choose a mentor. So when you find an area, how do you actually choose? How can you choose a mentor in that area?
I think a good way is if you've picked an area, let's say data security, because that's a very finite area, it's a very hot area.
Okay.
Try to find a lawyer that practices in that area and work on a project with them. Maybe work on a webinar, work on a paper, work on something. And basically you're giving them value by providing them research or assistance, and they in turn are give you value by mentoring you. I think all mentoring relationships go both ways. I think it is something that the mentee benefits from, but it's also something the mentor can benefit from. And for the mentee, they're getting experience they wouldn't otherwise get. And for the mentor, maybe they're getting access to information. Maybe they're getting some sort of service they wouldn't otherwise get. So if you're a mentee and you're looking for a mentor, mentors are being hesitant about trying to take time to share their experience and their wisdom with you, offer to do something for them. Again, co-write a piece, co-present a piece, help them with their website. Maybe they're one of the people who really knows and every law, but they're really struggling with technology. They don't understand Zoom, they don't understand LinkedIn. Volunteer to help them with that, and they'll teach you. So it has to be a symbiotic relationship, and the more you're giving, the more you'll get in return.
Of course. Thank you so much. And that actually is true. Sometimes everyone just wants to get something, but actually think of what you can do so that people perceive that you actually have something to offer and value as well. Thank you very much, Frank.
Sure.
So what approach should young lawyers who are interested in cross-border practice while still trying to maintain their domicile location take in light of this global event that hit us all? So you're trying to seek an area of specialization in a place that is not Nigeria, So if they're trying to still maintain their location in Nigeria, how can they, what kind of opportunities should they be looking for?
There are a lot of international firms that are either based in the US or in Europe that have offices throughout the world, and they use and they hire both associates and contract lawyers around the world to deal with all sorts of issues, both issues where those individuals are domiciled as well as issues elsewhere. And so, go online and research the large firms, the big international firms, the ones that have several hundred or even several thousand lawyers and staff, and reach out to them, see what opportunities they have. They may not have any, they may not even respond to you. A lot of folks aren't the most responsive, but certainly inquire. There might be opportunities out there that you're not appreciating that are available. And again, these days, there are certain firms that really look to hire people abroad for a variety of reasons. And I think that's going to be accelerated in the current situation. And so there'll be more firms that maybe before didn't think about it that way, but are certainly reevaluating and sort of looking at it those terms. So, research firms that have a worldwide grasp and reach out to folks in those firms. They may have somebody at an administrative level that hires people, or at least provides information about hiring, and are willing to bring you on to help you do research or writing or some other thing. There's so many different opportunities. You have to kind of explore and see which ones are available.
Okay, that's amazing. Okay, we're almost coming to an end of the question sessions. Thank you so much for staying with us.
No, of course.
So this is the second to the last question, and this is from Ayorinde Boyo. Hi, Ayorinde. He says, Mr. Frank, do you actually think it is proper for a young lawyer to carve a niche at the early stage of practice? So for people who feel, no, let's do a law, let's see how it goes. Do you think it's actually proper to actually start with one focused area at the earliest stage of practice as a young lawyer?
It has its risks, obviously, especially if the area of law you're choosing is very narrow, it's very niche practice, because if it doesn't work out, then that's all you know. But the payoff can be very substantial. I have a friend who I went to law school with who became an alcoholic beverage lawyer right out of law school. I didn't know that was even an area. And that's all he does, and that's all he's ever done. And it's very lucrative for him. And that's, he doesn't know anything about litigation. He doesn't know what I do. What he does is very narrow, and he basically gets licensing contracts and deals. But that's what he chose. If he had chosen a different area, maybe he wouldn't have been as successful. But at least in the US, the idea is to try to find an area that you're specialized in. So I think more and more clients are looking for the best in that area. And so if you can find a niche that you're comfortable in, that you enjoy, that caters to your talents, yes, there are some downsides, and you may find that there are fewer opportunities for firms. But if you find a firm that does do that practice, or you find clients that are interested in doing that, you may have a corner of the market in that area. So always think through, is this something you want to do for the next 10, 20, 30 years? If it is, you enjoy it, give it a shot, and you can always try to do something else later.
Okay. I hope that answers your question. So I think this is the last question that we will take. And he says, thanks a lot, Mr. Ramos. Really great to hear you speak after following for so long online. Thank you. My question, is it okay to restrict? Okay, I think this is quite similar. Well, I will just read it out just to add a few points. So he says, is it okay not to restrict one's law practice to a specific area? I am personally interested in and carry out my practice in a couple of areas. And sincerely, I feel that if I limit myself to just an area of law practice under the idea of specialization, I'll be unfulfilled at the end of the day. So I think your last answer answered this, but I don't know if you wanted to add something to just address that particular issue.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think you shouldn't specialize for the sake of specializing. You have to find an area that you enjoy. There are lots of hot areas at any given moment, and you shouldn't just join it because it's a hot area, because things change over time. You have to find an area that challenges you, that you find intellectually stimulating, that you enjoy. And again, some areas are very narrow, some are a little bit more broad, but you're more likely to get calls from people if they consider you an expert, and you're more likely to be considered an expert if you focus on one area. It's hard to just be a litigator or a trial lawyer. It's much easier to be an IP lawyer or a patent lawyer. So that's just how it is.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that's the last of the questions. And so thank you everyone for actually being part of this. We will wrap up in about 10 minutes. But before we do that, I would want Mr. Frank to give us any words, anything that crosses your mind. Do you have any thoughts for us going forward, any form of advice, so that we could wrap this up?
Sure. You know, again, you know, legal career is very challenging. It's very demanding. You know, there's lots of things for us to do and a lot of things to think about. It's important for you to sort of think through why you became a lawyer, why you went to law school, why you got licensed, you know, what motivated you when you were younger, when you were going through high school or college or law school or whatever institutions you've been through, and always kind of go back to that, because that's why you're here now. And you know, we all have obligations, we have families, we have bills, we have responsibilities, and a lot of times we forget that. We forget what motivated us to come here in the first place. And so my best advice to you is to never forget why you're doing what you're doing. Not just the day-to-day stuff, not just to put food on the table, but sort of the bigger picture of what really motivates you, because that's going to get you through the tough times, the challenging times, the dark times. And that's going to help you continue with the profession. A lot of people walk away from it. A lot of people, especially in the US, they become lawyers within 5, 10, 15 years, they're doing something else. You know, and I know it sounds kind of surprising, but I know a lot of former lawyers. And so if you're going to sustain yourself doing this for decades, you need to always go back to first principles and appreciate why you're doing it.
Okay, that's an incredible advice, and thank you very much for that. I don't know, somebody is sharing her screen. Please, can you not do that? Sorry, it's actually interrupting. Please, can you stop? Abiola Ogedembe. Sorry, I'm trying to sort that out.
That's okay.
All right. Yes. Please, could you cancel your screen sharing? Thank you very much. We are waiting for you to do that so that we can move forward. Can anyone chat, please, if you can see her screen? I'm trying to see how to sort this out, please. Okay. All right. Okay. I think that's been sorted out. Okay, she's still doing this again. Sorry, let me just, okay. All right, okay, so I think that's that. So thank you very much for sharing these thoughts with us. It's been quite insightful. Now for your books, how do we get access to your books?
Oh, sure, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you don't even have to follow me on LinkedIn. You just pull up my profile and you scroll down under my profile, there's a section called Publications. It's kind of toward the bottom, so you have to keep scrolling down. And you click on it, there'll be links to, I think, about a dozen books, most of which I wrote, a couple I co-wrote. And they deal with a whole host of issues, and they're short, they're fast reads, and some of them are applicable to our US system, but most of them are very general, and you may find them helpful.
Okay. So do you have a website that we could actually contact you on? I think it's on LinkedIn. So please, if you want to get more insight, I can assure you 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours is not enough to ingest the wisdom that Mr. Frank has for us. So please do follow him on LinkedIn. And when you do that, you could also share insights that you've gotten from this very short session using the hashtag the Young Lawyer Mentorship Series or the Future of Law. Please, you can tag Mr. Frank Ramos, and I believe that he will drop a comment or two, or a like, or a thumbs up. I believe he will do that. We'll be expecting.
Absolutely.
So we just want to say thank you very much. We are so grateful to you. Thank you for answering our call. You've been really inspired us. While preparing for this, I was so excited. I got calls from so many people, and everyone was just excited, and I think we all are. So in the light of no further questions, I think this is where we would actually wrap it up. And I just want to say thank you. For those of you who joined in late, we're actually recording this right now, and it will be available. I believe it will be available on LinkedIn, on our YouTube channels, and so you can always go back and re-watch everything. So thank you so much, sir. Can everyone say thank you? I'd like to see your chat, just to say thank you. Okay. Yeah, I believe they're reading it. Yes. Okay. So thank you very much. And until we come your way next time, but this is where we would actually say goodbye for now. Thank you, Mr. Frank, and thank you for your time. We are so grateful. There's so many comments here. And I'm tempted to actually do a screen selfie. Everyone just put their faces together. So I'm going to do this. Please, let's be orderly, all right? Don't unmute your volume, but you can unmute your video, and then of course you can have a screenshot with the speaker. So let me do that feature now. All right. Everyone says thanks a lot, Mr. Ramos. You are awesome. Yes, he's awesome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, let me see. Okay, so there are so many people here, so I can see people with their videos. I don't know, Mr. Frank. I don't know if you can see a lot of us. I would love to see our faces.
I really appreciate all the positive comments. It's very, very delightful. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so everyone, you can just do a screenshot. I believe that you would, when you open when you swipe to the left, you'll be able to see Mr. Frank, and you can actually see your picture. So it's like a selfie thing, right? So we are doing e-selfie now, and that's actually great. Okay. All right, so thank you very much. Oh, we have a lot of comments. Let me see if I can read them just to say thank you. Mary says, thank you, Mr. Ramos. It was worth it. Emmanuel says, it has been expository and inspiring. The chairman of the Ikeja branch, that's Young Lawyers Forum, he says, thank you. He has been very instrumental to my growth. Thank you, Ezekiel. Nathaniel says, thank you, Mr. Ramos. You are awesome. Lily says, Swam. Hi, Swam. She says, thank you very much. It was really exciting. And we have so many comments that time will not allow me to read. I believe right now, what time is it over in the US? I think should be.
It's 12:15 right now. Yeah, 12:15.
12:15. All right. And I know that you have a long day ahead of you. So at this point, we'll say thank you and have a very good time. Goodbye.
Have a great one. And thank you so much
everyone.
for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.